What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. I'm your host, Yusuf, and today's episode is for anyone who's been feeling stuck, foggy, inflamed, anxious, or just like your body is carrying more than it should. My guest is Stan Kurtz, founder of Quantum Research. Stan's works blend high resolution microscopy, metabolic mapping, and pattern analysis to explore what's happening inside the body and what might be interfering with clarity, cognition, behavior, and performance. His journey is deeply personal. Started when his son was diagnosed with autism and he refused to accept nothing can be done. That promise turned into decades of research and guiding people through transformational healing. Stan is intense, curious, and not here for surface level answers. And with that, I welcome Stan to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. That's a great introduction. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Stan, when people say toxins or poisons,
Yeah.
it can mean everything and nothing. In your world, what does poison actually mean?
Well, there's a few different types, but the premise I'll start with is I didn't originally look for this type of thing to happen in my life, and what happened to my son caused me to have to take a very deep look because I was told he could never recover. So that was a lie. And there's a lot of lies being told to people that have them believe they can't take action, that have them believe they don't have the power to look, and that they don't have the power to become their full selves. But a lot of people are walking around with this little feeling like, I know there's more. So, toxins, to answer your question, the things we commonly see in people are shocking and surprising. For example, most water is poisoned and has these, I'll call them entities in the water, these living organisms in the water that we find also in the blood that are involved in most chronic conditions. So that's one thing that we see. Other things that are really common, and by the way, this is all based on a long love of science and exploration. It's nothing that I it was by need. Okay, so it's not like I'm sitting here really excited to wanna find these things. I was really excited to find the truth and passionate about that. So other toxins that are in the body that are really common are things like heavy metals, and heavy metals can come from many things. We're breathing them right now, for example, from things like coal burning plants and things like that. There's also, we found a long time ago that many organophosphate and organochlorine pesticides are in people, and they're very, very toxic. And it goes back a long ways where that has been used to cause harm. If you look at other toxins, we find remnants of different medicines people have taken. Antibiotics, for example, is something that lasts a very long time in the body. And many of us as kids were given that because that's what we were told to do. And you can find evidence of that in people just by looking at their blood. So they've taken things and it just grows inside people and it stays. So there's many things that we find that I'll say interfere with the person's best health, and it's very easy to find. I can show you examples in slides whenever you're ready, but I'll go on your lead on questions you may want to follow up with that one.
Yeah. And my follow-up question would be how can a person tell the difference between, real psychological load and just stress, burnout, or anxiety
This
present
is
in their
awesome.
body?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Excellent questions, by the way. So basically, if a shortcut to try to figure out if you're brain is optimized is
Mhm.
if you um, are plagued with your past, or if you're plagued with pressure of the future,
Okay.
what I find is the human body, when it's optimized, does not do that easily. So I have examples of, for example, there was a woman who lost her house in the Palisades fires here in California, and she described herself as a stress of 10 or 12 of 10,
Okay.
and I have video of her when I gave her some metabolites for the brain. Within 60 seconds, she said, "I feel a sense of peace." And we didn't give her her house back. She just was regulated. So if you're in fight or flight, it burns a lot of brain chemistry. If you have infections in you, that burns a lot of brain chemistry. If you're involved with toxins, it burns brain chemistry, and that creates a cycle of things sticking rather than the regulated mind says, I lost my house, and what do I do next? And that's how she was, and all we did as that sort of experiment was give her a few metabolites for her brain, and it literally happened in 60 seconds, and that's one of the videos that we have of, like, 200, testimonies that's available. I could literally play the video now, it's up to you, but continue with your questions and and I can do that. So the difference I would say is, if you have something repeating in your head and you don't take action, that's usually either an infection, toxin, or trauma that's putting your brain in fight or flight. Fight or flight means that you don't move forward, that you're sort of obsessing in it. Many times when people come and we start research with them, we'll ask them, "What's your stress level from 1 to 10?" And invariably, everyone says, 10, 9, 8, 7, whatever it happens to be. They don't come in as a 0. But within the first hour, we'll usually get them, like, I'd say 90% of the time, within, like, 15 minutes, we'll do a couple things that brings them straight to 0. And so that's how I know the body, when it's regulated, makes humans very logical, very capable to deal with just about anything. And when you're dysregulated, when you see dysregulation in the blood, you can see it behaviorally in people. And I do this every day, and I'm immersed in trying to help people become their best. So I'm very privileged that when somebody walks in the door, I look at them and I can very often predict what we'll see in the blood. There are patterns that you see in the blood that behaviorally show up in people, which means that we're walking around not at our best and don't know it. And because it's so prevalent and because it happens from early in life, humans are walking around not realizing what they're capable of. And very often people walk out of here and they're like, I had no idea. I can't believe it. And I get notes all the time like my life became so easy. Um, I can't believe how great everything is. I've had people come in here absolutely suicidal. And then by the time they leave, they forget what they were stressed about. And then they write me notes about all their accomplishments afterwards. And this isn't one-off thing. And this is not exaggeration. This is common. And so I'd say, you know, I guess I say it this way. We don't realize our potential. And until we get there, and it makes sense because if you don't have context of how powerful you can be and how clear you can be and how you can deal with life, you're muscling through it as best you can. And humans are amazing and bodies are amazing, but you don't realize the shackles and the seaweed we have, until it, to me, until you see a drop of blood and you see what's in there that's interfering with how those blood cells are supposed to work, you can't tell. People come in, "Oh, I'm pretty good, I'm pretty good," and you see their cells are a mess, and when they see it and they go, "Holy cow," and then, we do this work and they get clean and they're like, "Now I understand," and it's very consistent over and over and over again. So, the difference I would say is basically, you know, a punch in the gut when something happens, somebody betrays you, somebody leaves you, there's a loss of some sort, whatever that would be. Um, if you are regulated, it goes way easier than if you're not. And just about everything that I've worked on, we work on some sort of trauma will come up. Of course, people have trauma that's locked up, and when you're dysregulated, it's just kind of like put aside so they can move forward, but that's an anchor holding you back. So if you're able to move through things clearly and easily and navigate things without, you know, nighttime worry or stress or things like that, um, great. But most people have some of that to a degree, and it is a combination, in my view, of trauma that's unresolved, but that is usually associated to a dysregulation in the blood, which means it's toxins and or infections, and that's underlying just about everything I've ever seen in one way or the other.
Okay. But our body has its own filters, I would say, like liver, kidney, gut, lungs, skin, everything.
Yes.
Even after having those systems, why do people still feel foggy, fatigued, etc., etc.?
I'd love to show you some examples of why, but I can say this. First thing I would say is the blood is amazing, the body is amazing. Our bodies make a million decisions. Like in order for me to be on the show this morning, between waking up and coming here the body's made a million decisions to keep me alive. So I am very grateful for the human body and the blood. But the truth is, there's a lot of influences that want us not to be at our highest good. And I'll just state that we have so much evidence over time that dollars and motives are more important than humans, than each of us, you and I, brother, getting everything that we can. And it's an unfortunate truth that I don't like to see, but I have to, and I see it over and over again. And one of the things I do, like, when my son was sick, I made a promise. I made a promise to God, and I said, if you help me help him, I will help everyone that you put in front of me. And that's how I approach each person. I approach them like they're my son, and I approach them like that commitment, because I must have been truthful, because I got what I asked for, and it was so important to me that what I meant was true, and I live that every day. So, I can tell you this, to answer your question specifically, our bodies do a great job. And in a different if they were different, many of us wouldn't have made it this far. But what I can tell you is that the body is designed to work at many different levels based on its capacity. And all of us have some level of toxin we're dealing with. We're breathing mercury right now. We're you know we're th- there are in typical water and coffee, there are things that you would call parasites that are living. You might call them parasites, but I call them something else, because it's very advanced, and I'll show you pictures of what I found, and they operate in ways that are shocking. And some of this is designed, I believe, not through evolution. I think they're intentionally designed. And we're seeing more and more evidence coming out about it, like how Lyme disease and ticks have been modified, by man. That these things that we see in the water, to me, are beyond nature. They're unnatural based on everything else we've ever seen in the blood, and they seem to be the cause of many, many illnesses. So I think there's some intentional play here against humans. For what motive, I don't necessarily know. And I know that when you take them out, the humans become better. And I'll show you some blood, and I'll show you some pictures of the people's faces and how different they look just in a couple days of work. And then there's a lot of videos that show people, whether it's an Olympic athlete or it's somebody that it was suicidal, how their lives change just in a short period of time by taking these things out. So our body does a great job, to what you're saying, to the credit that you're kind of alluding to. Our bodies do an amazing job, but there is an amazing job of things that are being thrown at humans for some reason, to keep them at a lower level. Not always to take them out, but to keep them at a lower level. And I don't know the motives. I don't know why, but I know I can see them. They are unnatural, and we know how to approach them. And this is what we spend every day with, is looking at these types of things and researching ways to remove them from the human, to give them their greatest chance of having their best life and their best purpose. Can I show you some slides?
Yeah, please.
Or are we short on time? All right, so I want to show you some stuff to give you examples of this. Yeah, and as far as connecting, easy, but I don't want to take up too much time because I feel like you keep these things short. But this was a quick message from Northeastern University that talked about how our research helped people not only in treating conditions but also understanding of the molecular origin of human attention. So in other words, we're playing in an area of actual consciousness. So it's not just, and there's a lot of things on here, and I'm just going to buzz by them on things that we've taken care of. And I really want to get to the nuts and bolts of this, and people can do more research about me later. There was a Native American that came here after having 5 heart attacks. This is what his blood looked like. These are supposed to be individual red blood cells, and in the background, it's supposed to be black with a couple dots that'll be stem cells. What we're seeing is these things that we find in the water end up in the blood, and they look like these very bright white chunks, and almost like a three-eye atlas, if you will, in there, and they capture stem cells. They literally hoard your stem cells, which are taking your body's ability to regenerate away. So that's what his blood looked like, and it makes sense that he had these heart attacks based on what I'm looking at. And again,
Yeah.
I'm no doctor. I'm just here to help show people stuff, and we do research on how to take care of some of these things. We don't diagnose, we don't cure anything. That's for Western medicine. Those words, that approach is Western medicine. What we do is we help people see what's there. So this is after a couple days of being here. He also came in with high sugar levels, and he recently had a seizure because of the sugar being so high. He left at almost normal sugar levels without having to approach medicine. So this was afterwards. And then on the bottom left-hand corner, this was a person with ADHD. That's a brain scan. The green is the normal, yellow is double slow wave, red is triple slow wave. With one of the sprays that we used, and I put an application for a patent to block this from being a medication in 2008. But this is one spray, and it literally took his stomach issues. He talked about feeling much better, and his attention completely changed. So this is pre and post, and theta activity is slow wave activity. This is just one of many things that we touch on. This was a nurse that came in that was having trouble walking upstairs. And if you were to, sort of chat GPT what this pattern looks like, these are spiky brown cells, and there's a missing amount of white blood cells, which are these white ones here. There's only a few white ones with all this spikiness in here. And this is what she described when she looked as leukemia. And I'm not debating on whether or not it is or not, but I just don't diagnose. But this is a wreck when it comes down to blood. So that was before, this is after. So this is using different natural remedies in an approach to help people become their best. And she said, I'm more clear than I've ever been. Everything I'm showing you, there is a video about this, because I like to always have proof of anything I say. There's a video about this, and we're going to give you the link to that. This was Karen. She was 76 years old. She said she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. She is also a person that took all of her COVID shots, and her immune cells look very interesting. Like this one is practically black. This one looks like a moon. This is not how they're supposed to look. They're supposed to look like white or blue clouds. And all of her cells are stacked so deeply on top of each other. It looks like they are peas smashed together,
Yeah.
like smashed into each other.
Yeah.
The cells are super flat. And this is how she came. She was anxious, agoraphobic, didn't want to go outside. And she came to me only if I had no one here. And that's how she was at 76 years old. 4 hours later, we were able to break this open, and she reports her anxiety was gone and her symptoms were gone. This is a year and a half ago, and now she travels internationally. She's back to doing art again. This is what she looks like.
Okay.
So when people say there's a plaque associated to Alzheimer's, that's not my experience at all. What I'm seeing is a condition that is born in the blood, that is very changeable. But I'm not here to change that. I'm just here to help people become their best. This was Kevin, who he shared with me. He formerly had prostate cancer. He was using he used radiation to recover himself, and we happened to take a look at his blood. This pattern is very common when we're seeing people that are involved in that word. And I said, "Well, I'm not so sure your blood's okay. We're gonna do it, you know." And we did a couple things to him. This is literally a couple hours later, and he went actually from peeing a lot at night to not peeing at night anymore. And I saw him a year later at a conference. We just saw him in passing. And he says he's still doing great. This is a 16-year-old boy that came, and he can be described as a boy with autism, according to his mom. Again, we don't diagnose anything. And he had very severe dysregulation while he was there. He was constantly talking about when is he going to leave, and I don't want to spend time here in this whole thing. And all these are videos on the site, by the way, so you can see the story in the video, so you can see the people yourself. So that's how he came, and this is at the end of the day. So all the red inflammation, the density of the red blood cells, this looks like a beehive or a rug. Anyone that understands anything to do with what red blood cells look like, this is unbelievable. It doesn't even look like it's possible that a person is really surviving this. And this is afterwards, and this still isn't fully cooked, I'd say. This isn't perfect. There is dysregulation in the cells, but all the inflammation's gone. And you see the plasma, and he's got some stem cells coming in the background. And mom reported it was like he went from being a boy to a man in one day, like a bar mitzvah, she described it. We also have lasers. This is a PT, one of the best ones in California, and he sprained his hand. And this is a laser that we used on that, and his pain went from a 5, and he's a highly discerning person, I'll say. And his pain went from a 5 down to a 1 just in a few minutes, and it was very surprising to him. This is what we found in the parasites or entities. I don't like using the word. I don't like using really any Western terms, to be honest, but these are sort of entities that we see inside the blood. This is a stem cell over here. This is what a stem cell looks like in a microscope that can read energy in the cells. And there's like 5 bands of energy that you see in stem cells, and the outside band kind of spins around. It's very cool. These stem cells can turn into, in theory, this is, the overall story about stem cells. The traditional story is they turn into other cells in the body. They can turn into brain cells, neurons. They can turn into muscle cells, soft tissue cells. You want these, but I actually think they're much more important than we give them credit for. When we see these entities in the water that we consume, they end up pulling these stem cells, and they survive based on them. So the more stem cells somebody has, the more of a chance they can have one of these, we'll call it toxins, inside their body. The more of these in the body I see, the more dysregulated cells, the more possibilities. I believe. I can't, say I absolutely know, but the more cases I see of dysregulated cells that look like they're moving towards cancer, is the more of these things we have in them. And this is another shot of this, and you can see all the dots. It looks like Morse code, looks like some sort of, interplanetary language.
Yeah.
So as they're dying off, you can start to see beyond just the white glow of their energy, and you can see the lines and lines of stem cells. Literally, each one can take thousands of stem cells out of your body, and the average we see is anywhere in the body of like 100,000 is very normal that we see. I'd say very common, not normal, to millions, like tens of millions, depending on how infested the person is. And most of the time, that goes away in a very short period of time with certain approaches you can do. This is what it looks like in the water. One of these this came from a child-based theme park, and I don't want to name names because I'm not interested in that kind of attention. But this is water that came from a restaurant at a theme park. So this is supposed to be really good water. Every element of this water does not look right. This, three-eye atlas kind of thing in here is exactly like the thing that we just talked about. And then I see these circles with the little blue in them with orange. They occur as these things die off in the blood. We see this in the blood a lot too, and they seem to turn into others. So this is like little eggs from them. And then this is also what the eggs tend to look like prior to turning into these little ice chip things that I think are very bad for the body. And inside them, you'll see lots of different stem cells and other things in their creation. Everything on this screen looks toxic to me. And that's what is being put in drinking water. I have found this in every type of bottled water, every type of spring water, every type of reverse osmosis water, every type of distilled water, and even we have a doctor who's here. She brought in surgical saline, and I can find it in surgical saline. So there's no way to filter these things out. And the way we do it is we help people with a remedy you put in the water that takes these things down. It stops their ability for them to get energy, and they die off before you drink your water. That's kind of our approach. This is one of these guys, I believe, growing larger into the intestinal tract, and we flush these things out. We have an ozone, antiparasitic colonic that we've done in research, and this is the type of thing as it grows that comes out. This is this was a boy who prior had cancer, and this is what his blood looked like on the left. He'd been through 11 rounds of 12 rounds of chemo, 17 rounds of radiation. He was considered recovered, but mom said there's something still wrong with him. This is what his blood looked like on the left. 3.5 days later, this is what his blood ended with. This is what he looked like before on the left when he came, and that's what he looked like on the right. It looks like two different people, almost like not only did we take stuff out of his blood, but it's like we took stuff out of his like binded to his soul, because the one on the left, if I asked him a question, had to ask his mom because he was so shy what the answer was. The one on the right was friends with every man that was here, high-fiving and having fun. This was another photo of somebody pre and post. On the right, you see lots of stem cells, immune cells that literally look like they have happy faces on them. This is her beforehand, and this is 3 days later. They just look so different. On the left here, you see this film that is going on in the blood. There's red inflammation. There is that white thing over here is another one of these entities. And then on the right, 3 days later, and I have the dates on the bottom, including the times of the picture. You see beautiful, beautiful blood. There's a couple little elements that they probably could have stayed and done one more days of work. And this is, I'll end. I understand. And this is the person pre and post. I hear you talking, so I'm assuming that's enough data for now.
Yes. And Sam, thank you so much for bringing the curiosity and the conviction and for reminding people that healing is not magic, it's patterns, inputs, and removing what blocks the system.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You're absolutely right.
And to everyone listening, if this episode sparked something, share it with a friend who's been feeling depleted and confused. And if you haven't yet followed Healthy Mind, Healthy Life and drop a review, it helps this message reach the people you needed. I'm Yusuf. This is Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. Keep it real, keep it grounded, and keep choosing the version of you that breathes easier. Thank you so much.